Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. We are so excited to bring back our Legacy gameplay series. We have all kinds of great Legacy gameplay coming to you over the next few months, so be sure to like this video and subscribe to get notified of when we publish more. Also, if you want to support more Legacy content, check out our Patreon and see if there is a tier for you. We also have merchandise like dice, coins, tokens, sleeves, and playmats at our merch store. Support us and get some awesome merchandise in return. We thought we would come back with a bang, so here are 3 different matchups tonight. So, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ryan piloting Goblins. This deck seeks to resolve as many Goblins as possible and win through combat. Ryan's opening hand contains a Mountain, Goblin Warchief, Munitions Expert, Wasteland, Aether Vial, Goblin Matron, and his London Mulligan is a Sling Gang Lieutenant. After that, we have Zach piloting Sneak and Show. This is a combo deck that tries to cheat massive threats onto the battlefield in order to close out the game. Zach's opening hand contains a Sneak Attack, Daze, 2 Ponders, Snow-Covered Island, Ancient Tomb, and a City of Traders. Without further ado, let's kick off this loud, livid, litigious laugh. Ryan had the best Rihanna lip sync and gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Wasteland for turn. He casts Aether Vial. He passes. Zach draws and plays a Snow-Covered Island. He casts Ponder. He looks at the top 3, doesn't like what he sees, shuffles, and draws. Zach passes. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin as it enters. Ryan ends his turn. Zach draws and casts Ponder again. He looks at the top 3, rearranges, and draws. He plays a Snow-Covered Island for turn. He casts Preordain. He scries 2 and draws a card. Zach sends it back to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Mountain. He taps his Cavern of Souls to cast Goblin Matron. It enters and Ryan fetches up a Goblin Lackey into his hand. Ryan gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws, plays a Flooded Strand, and passes. At the end of Zach's turn, Ryan activates Aether Vial, putting Goblin Lackey onto the battlefield. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Rashadan Port. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Matron and Lackey. Zach takes it, Goblin Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts Muxus, Goblin Grandee, onto the battlefield. Muxus enters, Ryan reveals the top 6, putting Conspicuous Snoop and Goblin Ringleader onto the battlefield. Ringleader enters, Ryan reveals the top 4, putting Sling Gang Lieutenant, Goblin Matron, and Goblin Crater Maker into his hand. With nothing else, Ryan passes. During Zach's upkeep, Ryan activates Rashadan Port, tapping down one of Zach's islands. Zach draws and cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He plays a City of Traders. He casts Sneak Attack. Zach ends his turn. At the end of Zach's turn, Ryan sacrifices his Wasteland, destroying Volcanic Island. He activates Aether Vial, putting Goblin Crater Maker onto the battlefield. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Mountain. He activates Aether Vial, putting Goblin Warchief onto the battlefield. He taps his Cavern of Souls to cast Sling Gang Lieutenant. Lieutenant enters and Ryan creates 2 Goblins. Ryan moves to combat and Zach, seeing that he's dead to attacks and Lieutenant activations, concedes the game to Ryan. Before Game 2, Zach moves to sideboard. He brings in 2 Pyroclasm and 2 Abrade to deal with Ryan's army. He brings in 2 Sorcerous Spyglass to deal with Aether Vial and Sling Gang, and an Arcane Artisan as a backup way to cheat his threats onto the battlefield. He takes out 4 Daze and 3 Force of Will since Ryan has Aether Vial and Cavern of Souls to push through counter magic. Ryan also moves to sideboard. He brings in 4 Thoughtseize to force Zach to discard his threats and enablers, and 1 Caracas to bounce big creatures back to his hand. He removes 3 Munitions Expert, 1 Tarfire, and a Bloodstained Mire. In this game, Zach's opening hand contains a Preordain, Emrakul to Aeon's Torn, Show and Tell, Polluted Delta, Ancient Tomb, Misty Rainforest, and a Snow-Covered Island. In this game, Ryan's opening hand contains an Aether Vial, Goblin Lackey, Badlands, Muxus Goblin Grandee, Mountain, Goblin Matron, and a Cavern of Souls. And Zach gets to start us off. Zach plays a Snow-Covered Island for turn. He casts Preordain, scrying 2 and drawing a card. He passes. Ryan draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin as it enters. He casts Goblin Lackey and passes back to Zach. Zach draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps it to help cast Show and Tell. It resolves, and Zach puts Grizzlebrand onto the battlefield, and Ryan puts Muxus Goblin Grandee onto the battlefield. Muxus enters, Ryan reveals the top 6, putting Goblin Lackey, Boggart Harbinger, Goblin Matron, and another Goblin Matron onto the battlefield. Both Matrons trigger, Ryan fetches up a Muxus Goblin Grandee into his hand, and then fetches up another Muxus into his hand. With this interesting turn of events, Zach passes back to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Badlands. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with everything. Muxus triggers, getting +5/+5. Zach blocks 1 Goblin Lackey with Grizzlebrand. Then he takes the rest and gains 7 life through Grizzlebrand. The other Goblin Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts Muxus Goblin Grandee onto the battlefield, sacrificing the other. Muxus enters, Ryan reveals the top 6, putting Goblin Crater Maker and Conspicuous Snoop onto the battlefield. In his second main phase, Ryan casts an Aether Vial. Ryan passes to Zach. Zach draws and pays 7 life to activate Grizzlebrand, drawing 7 cards. He casts Ponder. He looks at the top 3, doesn't like what he sees, shuffles, and draws. He plays a Volcanic Island for turn. He casts Preordained, scrying 2 and drawing a card. He passes, discarding to hand size. During his upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Ether Vial. He draws and plays a Mountain. He moves to combat, attacks with everything, and Ryan wins the game. What a fun match. We are going to go again, so let's dive right in. First, we have Adam piloting Blue-Red Mill. This deck seeks to mill out its opponents as fast as possible through multiple landfall and Spellslinger abilities. Adam's opening hand contains a Shelldock Isle, Scalding Tarn, Hedron Crab, Ruin Crab, Brainstorm, Krark the Thumbless, and a Maddening Cacophony. Next, we have Ryan piloting Elves. This deck seeks to put as many elves onto the battlefield as possible, overwhelm their opponent, and then finish the game with a massive overrun effect. Ryan's opening hand contains a Nettle Sentinel, Glimpse of Nature, Savannah, Misty Rainforest, Scavenging Ooze, Gaia's Cradle, and an Elvish Visionary. Adam won the 100-sided die roll and gets to start us off. Adam plays a Shelldock Isle into play tapped. He looks at the top 4 and hides away 1 card. Adam passes. Ryan draws and plays a Savannah. He casts an Allosaurus Shepherd. Ryan ends his turn. Adam draws and casts a Ruin Crab. He plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. Ruin Crab triggers and Ryan mills 3. Adam gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Gaia's Cradle. He casts Scavenging Ooze. Ryan passes. Adam draws and plays a Hedron Crab. He plays an Island for turn. Ruin Crab and Hedron Crab trigger and Ryan mills 6. Adam casts a Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. Adam ends the turn. Ryan draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts Glimpse of Nature. He casts Nettle Sentinel. Glimpse of Nature triggers and Ryan draws. He casts Wirewood Symbiote and draws through Glimpse again. He casts Elvish Visionary and draws again. Visionary enters and Ryan draws. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Adam cracks his Scalding Tarn, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. Both crabs trigger and Ryan mills 6. The turn moves to Adam. Adam draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. Both crabs trigger and Ryan mills 6. He cracks Misty Rainforest, pays a life, and fetches up an island onto the battlefield. Both crabs trigger and Ryan mills 6 more. Adam activates Shelldock Isle, casting Archive Trap from exile for free. Ryan mills 13. Next, Adam casts Maddening Cacophony and Ryan mills the rest of his library. Adam passes. Ryan attempts to draw from an empty library and loses the game. Before game 2, Adam moves to sideboard. He brings in 3 Submerged to better deal with the big army of elves. He takes out Krark the Thumbless, Surgical Extraction, and Ravenous Trap. Ryan also moves to sideboard. He brings in 2 Choke to slow down Adam's mana production. He also brings in Progenitus to better fight against Mill by having a Shuffler in his deck. He brings out Allosaurus Shepherd, Wirewood Symbiote, and Scavenging Ooze. In this game, Ryan's opening hand contains a Glimpse of Nature, Savannah, Quirion Ranger, Nettle Sentinel, Wirewood Symbiote, Wooded Foothills, and his London Mulligan is a Verdant Catacombs. In this game, Adam's opening hand contains 2 Brain Freeze, Hedron Crab, Ruin Crab, Visions of Beyond, Bloodstained Mire, and a Misty Rainforest. And Ryan gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Wooded Foothills for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts Nettle Sentinel. Ryan passes. Adam draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts a Hedron Crab. He passes. Ryan draws and plays a Savannah. He moves to combat and attacks Adam with Nettle Sentinel. Adam takes it, and in his second main phase, Ryan casts Allosaurus Shepherd. Sentinel triggers and untaps. Ryan passes the turn. Adam draws and casts Ruin Crab. He plays a Bloodstained Mire for turn. Both crabs trigger and Ryan mills 6. Adam ends his turn. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He attacks Adam with Sentinel. Adam blocks with Ruin Crab. In his second main phase, Ryan casts Quirion Ranger. Sentinel triggers and untaps. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Adam cracks his Bloodstained Mire, pays a life, and fetches up a mountain onto the battlefield. Both crabs trigger and Ryan mills 6. The turn moves to Adam. Adam draws and casts Hedron Crab. He plays a Misty Rainforest for turn. All 3 crabs trigger and Ryan mills 9. Adam ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and casts Glimpse of Nature. He casts Wirewood Symbiote, drawing from Glimpse. He plays a Verdant Catacombs for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts Quirion Ranger, drawing from Glimpse again. Unfortunately, not getting what he wanted, Ryan has to pass the turn. At the end of Ryan's turn, Adam cracks his Misty Rainforest, pays a life, and fetches up an island onto the battlefield. 3 crabs trigger and Ryan mills 9. Also in the instep, Adam casts Manamorphose. He adds 2 mana and draws a card. He casts Brain Freeze with all copies targeting Ryan. Ryan mills 3, milling Progenitus, shuffling it back into his library. He then mills for the rest of Brain Freeze, hitting Progenitus again, shuffling it back in. The turn moves to Adam. Adam draws and casts Visions of Beyond, drawing 3 cards. He plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. Ryan mills 9, milling Progenitus, shuffling it back in. Adam passes. Ryan draws and plays a Dryad Arbor. He moves to combat and attacks with everything. Adam blocks Nettle Sentinel with Ruin Crab and takes the rest. In his second main phase, Ryan casts Allosaurus Shepherd. Sentinel triggers and untaps. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Adam cracks his Scalding Tarn, pays a life, and fetches up an island onto the battlefield. Since Ryan has no library, he doesn't have anything to mill. Still in the end step, Adam casts Visions of Beyond, drawing 3 cards. The turn moves to Adam. Adam draws, takes no actions, and passes. Ryan attempts to draw from an empty library, loses, and Adam wins the game. We've got one more for you tonight, so let's kick it off. First, we have Ryan bringing back Goblins. This deck seeks to put an army of goblins onto the battlefield and overwhelm opponents through combat. Ryan's opening hand contains Rishadan Port, Badlands, Goblin Lackey, Muxus Goblin Grandee, and his London Mulligans are Goblin War Chief and 2 Goblin Matrons. Next, we have Zach piloting lands. This is a control deck that seeks to create a massive Merit Lodge token and one-shot its opponents. Zach's opening hand contains a Life from the Loam, Elvish Reclaimer, Mox Diamond, Rishadan Port, Field of the Dead, and 2 crop rotations. Ryan won the Full House Trivia game and gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Badlands for turn. He casts Goblin Lackey. He passes. Zach draws and casts a Mox Diamond, discarding Field of the Dead. He casts Elvish Reclaimer. He plays a Sheltered Thicket into play tapped. Zach ends his turn. Ryan draws and plays a Wasteland. He sacrifices it, destroying Zach's Sheltered Thicket. Ryan ends his turn. Zach draws and plays a Rishadan Port. He casts Life from the Loam, returning Sheltered Thicket and Field of the Dead to his hand. Zach ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and also plays a Rishadan Port. He passes back to Zach. During Zach's upkeep, Ryan activates Rishadan Port, tapping down Zach's Rishadan Port. Zach draws and casts Elvish Reclaimer. He plays a Sheltered Thicket into play tapped. Zach gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Goblin Lackey. He passes. During Zach's upkeep, Ryan activates Rishadan Port, tapping down Zach's Sheltered Thicket. Zach draws and plays a Grove of the Burn Willows. He taps it, Ryan gains a life, and casts Valakut Exploration. Zach passes. Ryan draws and casts Munitions Expert. It enters and deals 3 damage to Elvish Reclaimer, killing it. Ryan moves to combat and attacks Zach with both Goblin Lackeys. Zach blocks 1 with Reclaimer, Lackey dies, and Zach takes the rest. Goblin Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts a Muxus Goblin Grandee onto the battlefield. Muxus enters, Ryan reveals the top 6, putting Goblin Cratermaker and Conspicuous Snoop onto the battlefield. With nothing else, Ryan passes. Zach draws and casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing Sheltered Thicket as an additional cost. He fetches up a Dark Depths onto the battlefield. Valakut Exploration triggers, and Zach exiles a Taiga from the top of his library. He plays a Thespian Stage for turn. Exploration triggers, and Zach exiles Mox Diamond. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Field of the Dead. Zach passes, and Valakut Exploration triggers. In response, Ryan sacrifices Goblin Cratermaker, targeting Elvish Reclaimer. In response, Zach taps his Grove, gaining Ryan 1 life to cast Crop Rotation, sacrificing Grove of the Burn Willows, fetching up a Maze of Ith onto the battlefield. Valakut Exploration triggers, and Zach exiles Exploration. And since there are now 3 or more lands in Zach's graveyard, Elvish Reclaimer gets +2/+2. Then Cratermaker's ability resolves, dealing 2 to Reclaimer, but not killing it. Then Valakut Exploration's trigger resolves, Zach puts 2 cards into his graveyard, dealing 2 to Ryan. The turn moves to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He activates Rishadan Port, tapping down Zach's Maze of Ith. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with everything. Muxus triggers and gets +3/+3. Before blocks, Zach activates Thespian Stage, making a copy of Dark Depths. Then Dark Depths triggers, Zach sacrifices it and puts a 2020 Merit Lodge token onto the battlefield. Ryan sees he is dead and concedes the game to Zach. Before Game 2, Ryan moves to the sideboard. He puts in a Karakas to deal with Merit Lodge. He also puts in 2 Leyline of the Void to deal with the land strategy. He puts in 2 Surgical Extraction to move key pieces, and then he puts in a Pithing Needle to stop the Merit Lodge combo. He removes 3 Munitions Expert, Tarfire, and a Goblin Cratermaker. Zach also moves to the sideboard. He brings in 3 Force of Vigor because he knows that Leylines are always brought in against lands decks. He takes out 2 Sylvan Library and a Bojuka Bog. In this game, Ryan's opening hand contains a Goblin Lackey, Skirk Prospector, Aether Vial, Scalding Tarn, Wasteland, Goblin Ringleader, and his London Mulligan is a Pashalik Mons. In this game, Zach's opening hand contains a Mox Diamond, Wasteland, Ghost Quarter, Thespian Stage, Forest, the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, and a Valakut Exploration. And Ryan gets to start us off. Ryan plays a Scalding Tarn for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts a Goblin Lackey and passes the turn. Zach draws and plays a Wasteland. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Thespian Stage. He sacrifices Wasteland, destroying Ryan's Badlands. Zach passes. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with Goblin Lackey. Zach takes it, Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts a Goblin Ringleader onto the battlefield. Ringleader enters, Ryan reveals the top 4 and puts a Goblin Lackey into his hand. In his second main phase, Ryan plays a Karakas for turn. He casts Aether Vial. Ryan ends his turn. Zach draws and plays the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. Ryan sighs, and Zach passes the turn. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for Goblin Lackey through Tabernacle, and the Goblin Ringleader is destroyed. Also in his upkeep, he puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Wasteland. He sacks his Wasteland, destroying Tabernacle. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Lackey. Zach takes it, Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts a Skirk Prospector onto the battlefield. Ryan ships the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Ghost Quarter. He casts Life from the Loam, returning Wasteland, Tabernacle, and Thespian Stage from his graveyard to his hand. Zach passes. At the end of Zach's turn, Ryan activates Aether Vial, putting Goblin Lackey onto the battlefield. During its upkeep, Ryan puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin as it enters. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with everything. Zach takes it, and Ryan ignores his Lackey trigger. Ryan passes the turn. Zach draws and plays a Tabernacle as his land for turn. He passes. During his upkeep, Ryan sacrifices Skirk Prospector, adding a red. He pays for both Goblin Lackeys through Tabernacle. Also in his upkeep, he puts a charge counter onto Aether Vial. He draws and plays a Mountain. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with both Lackeys. Zach takes it, Lackey triggers, and Ryan puts a Goblin Cratermaker onto the battlefield. Ryan ends his turn. At the end of Ryan's turn, Zach casts Force of Vigor for its alternate cost, exiling Life from the Loam, destroying Aether Vial. Zach draws and plays a Wasteland. He sacks Wasteland, targeting Ryan's Cavern of Souls. In response, Ryan taps it to sack Goblin Cratermaker, destroying Zach's Mox Diamond. Then Cavern is destroyed. Zach passes it back to Ryan. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for his creatures through Tabernacle. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with his Lackeys. Zach takes it, and Lackey triggers twice. Ryan puts Goblin Matron onto the battlefield. Matron enters, and Ryan fetches up a Muxus Goblin Grandee into his hand. Then the other Lackey trigger resolves, and Ryan puts Muxus onto the battlefield. Muxus enters, Ryan reveals the top 6, and reveals no goblins. A very dismayed Ryan passes back to Zach. During his draw step, Zach dredges Life from the Loam back to his hand. He plays a Forest for turn. He casts Life from the Loam, returning 2 Wastelands and Sheltered Thicket back to his hand. Zach ends his turn. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for Goblin Lackey and Muxus through Tabernacle, destroying the others. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with both Goblins. Muxus triggers and gets +1/+1. Zach takes it, and Ryan ignores his Lackey trigger. Ryan ships the turn to Zach. Zach draws and casts Exploration. He plays a Wasteland for turn. He plays a Wasteland as his Exploration land for turn. He sacrifices a Wasteland, destroying Ryan's Caracas. Zach passes. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for Muxus through Tabernacle. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks with Muxus. Zach takes it, and Ryan passes. During his draw step, Zach dredges Life from the Loam back to his hand. In his main phase, he cycles Sheltered Thicket, drawing a card. He casts Elvish Reclaimer. He plays a Dark Depths. He plays a Thespian Stage as his Exploration land for turn. Zach sends it over to Ryan. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for Muxus through Tabernacle. He draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin as it enters. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Muxus. Zach blocks with Elvish Reclaimer. Reclaimer dies, and Ryan passes. Zach draws and plays a Thespian Stage for turn. He casts Life from the Loam, returning Sheltered Thicket, Grove of the Burn Willows, and Wasteland to his hand. He plays a Wasteland as his Exploration land for turn. He sacks Wasteland, destroying Ryan's Cavern of Souls. Zach passes. During his upkeep, Ryan pays for Muxus through Tabernacle. He draws and attacks Zach with Muxus. In response, Zach activates Thespian Stage, making a copy of Dark Depths. Both are sacrificed, and Zach creates a 20/20 Merit Lodge. He blocks Muxus with Merit Lodge. Muxus dies, and Ryan passes. During his upkeep, Zach doesn't pay for Merit Lodge through Tabernacle, since it's indestructible. He draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with Merit Lodge. Ryan cannot block, takes the hit, dies, and Zach wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed our return to Legacy. What match was your favorite? Would you have played something differently? What deck would you like to see next? Let us know in the comments below. Well, that about wraps it up for this return to Legacy. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more Legacy content. Also, check out our Patreon and consider supporting us to ensure we keep bringing you more great gameplay. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.